Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to Big Blend Radio. Today, we're going to be talking about bridges and trust. And every third Thursday, we chat with Lea Brovedani. She is known as the Trust Architect. She's a speaker, a workshop facilitator, and she is also recognized as a top thought leader on trust by the organization Trust Across America. She's also the author of Trust Me, Restore Belief and Confidence in an Uncertain World, and Trusted, Secret Lessons from an Inspired Leader. And it's always great to chat with Lea, but I'm so excited because today we are changing things up a little bit, talking about bridges and how bridges connect with trust. And everyone, her website, by the way, is thetrustarchitect.biz. So welcome back, Lea. How are you?
I'm good. It's cold. I think we got kind of teased with some really warm weather, and then it's not now. So I kind of feel a little
Listen, you cannot trust the weather. That's things you cannot trust. In fact, I think next time you come on the show, we should just go through a list of what you can and cannot trust. You cannot trust the weather.
No, you can't. They sucked me into believing it was spring was coming, and now they gave me more winter.
So see, that's Mama Nature. She just does what she wants.
I was going to say that sounds like a politician's kind of behavior, but we don't want to put politicians and Mother Nature together. No, don't you say
that. It'll get colder.
Don't do it. Besides, Earth Day is coming soon, and it is getting to be spring. Today, we're recording from Anacortes, Washington. And Lea, you're right outside Philadelphia, right?
Well, yeah, we are. It's almost like a suburb. It's Elkins Park. Pretty little Elkins Park. It is. Nice. It's really pretty.
I was going to say, it's la-di-da, very nice. Elkins Park. Well, it does. It sounds like you have elk in your backyard.
We actually have had deer in the backyard. Yeah.
I love that. Ooh, so that's sweet.
Trust and bridges. You've got a great article, and everyone, you can read it on blendradioandtv.com. You'll see Lea is one of our experts, and you can click on the links from there. But this is something, as Nancy and I travel the country full-time on our Love Your Parks tour, one thing we started documenting is parks and also bridges in parks. And there's everything from piers and boardwalks. Like you could walk on a boardwalk through a swamp with alligators right at your ankles. You could go walking on a pier and look down and see a shark fin. So you really want to trust what you're walking on. Suspension bridges in parks. And then there's all these just massive, massive bridges that go across the ocean, that go across major rivers. There's stone bridges, truss bridges, all kinds of bridges. But you want to trust them going over. I still want to know how the heck people do these boardwalks in swamps. I want to know, like, do they have alligator repellent? I don't know.
Yeah, I would think they'd have to be floating docks, wouldn't they?
Yeah, it's kind of like, wow, how do they do it? And I always think about that when you're crossing. And of course, it was in your state the other day. Joe Biden went out to talk about the infrastructure bill in Philadelphia. No, it was Pittsburgh, and the bridge fell down when he got there. And I'm like, who planted that? But I mean, this is a reality. A lot of our bridges are falling down and are in great need of repair. So as a public, we need to trust that those things are taken care of. Not only the engineers that build the bridge, but we need to trust that it's going to be maintained so that it doesn't fall down. I mean, how does the bridge makers feel when a bridge collapses and they probably made it perfectly, built it, exactly?
Well, what's interesting? I was thinking about the bridge in the Grand Canyon, that skywalk bridge that is so scary for you. I remember finishing the bridge on my hands and knees because it was that scary. And I'm not a chicken, but there were kids running up and down and parents weren't watching their kids. And it would have been very simple, easy for one of them to slip, fall, and bye-bye. So I don't understand parents who don't watch their kids. But because they were running up and down, I thought, I'm going down on my hands and knees because I'm not falling off the bridge because this mother can't watch her kids. So it was scary. And I think, you do this and you actually pay to cross that bridge. It's a tourist attraction, and it's about $90 now. So I mean, so you pay to get scared, and that bridge isn't well maintained because it's a tourist attraction. So when you look at all these other bridges that we cross almost every day, we cross them every day. We pay our taxes. Why aren't these bridges maintained? What is
Yes,
up
Lee.
with that?
Welcome to the show. While we'll just sit here and complain about bridges that are falling down everywhere or not being maintained.
Well, it's a point,
Yeah, and the article really is about when they're first built, and the engineers that are hired to build it, and whether or not they're qualified, or and it's not even qualifications, because it has as much to do with integrity and just competence. Like, you want to make sure that if someone's saying, yeah, I can build that bridge, it's not the first time and they go, I think this works.
It's like, oh, this will be fun. This will be great.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and so when they do this, and this is such a cool article, and it's Kipling Bridges and a Promise. And you go, what does Rudyard-Kipling, a collapsed bridge, and engineers have in common? And I feel like we should be in a bar when you ask that question. And you talk about the ceremony of the iron ring for engineers. So now I feel like we should be in the Lord of the Rings. And this is really, I had no idea Rudyard-Kipling had anything to do with bridges. It's interesting.
Yeah, and this is up in Canada. I mean, they've got a similar program down in the United States, but this actually started after it was supposed to have been inspired by a bridge that collapsed in Canada that was supposed to be spanning the St. Lawrence River. And when it was built, they said it was going to be one of the natural wonders of the world, and it was going to be even more beautiful and impressive than the Firth of Forth Bridge of Scotland, which was a cantilevered bridge. So they planned it, but it didn't, we'll get into the story. It didn't work out the way they planned.
See, I hate when that happens.
So it didn't happen that way, but what is this whole thing about, the order of the iron ring? I mean, is this because the bridge collapsed, right? So then they said, we need to do something where things really do work out. I mean, so they build this bridge and then bye-bye, right? This is back in 1903, you were saying, and this is over the St. Lawrence River. So it went kaboom. Who did it? I mean, who would you like to be the person that goes on there? It's like I remember our band had a party and we were performing at a place, and people got a little rowdy at this concert we were giving. It was a New Year's Eve concert. And I don't know, people all got up on these tables.
Yeah.
And then little teeny Nicole, this friend of mine, tiny little, I mean, the most petite, tiny little lady you can imagine.
Smallest one there.
Gets on the table and the whole thing collapsed, which we thought was funny,
Yeah.
But it was. And Nancy wasn't even on the table. But
No
anyway,
way. I'm
table,
not dumb.
I know, she was performing, but the table collapsed and it was a tiny person that got on there. It was like the straw that broke the camel's back.
Right.
What was it that made this whole bridge just go kaboom?
Well, when I was doing the research on it, first of all, there's kind of a little bit of political intrigue too, because when they first started putting together the plan for building the bridge, it was under one government. There was a change of government, and then there was also a change in the leadership of the team that was planning it. And they ended up hiring someone who really didn't have any experience building a cantilevered bridge.
Wow.
So you have someone who is in charge of building one of the largest bridges of its kind in the world, and really hasn't done it before. And then during the whole building process, there was more experienced engineers who were saying, listen, the weight of the bridge is greater than the load it can handle. You can't, there's some structural problems here. And they would fire them for saying that. So there was a lot of red flags.
That sounds like those condos in Florida that keep collapsing. It sounds the same thing. This whole process of somebody coming in and saying, we're going to do it my way or the highway, and boom, there it goes.
Yeah.
And
so it took over 4 years to build this bridge. And they weren't quite completed. I think they had a small, it was almost completely done. It was almost connected. They worked on it for over 4 years, and that wasn't even including all of the time of the design and the back and forth with the bureaucrats. It took less than 15 seconds for the bridge to collapse.
Wow. Dude,
so people didn't have time, when they felt that rumbling, there wasn't time to, oh my gosh, it's shaking, let's run. No, it was in the water. Wow. And it killed over 75 people. So it was,
that's sad, man. That's horrific.
And 35 of them were Mohawk steelworkers that are known around the world for their ability and their fearlessness, and both on both sides of the border. So it was a real loss of life and talent.
Wow,
that's really sad. And so you also talk about there's political change, and then there's the changes of the people that initially, the people that were going to start this bridge and planned it and did all that part of it are now, changing the horse midstream is not a good idea half the time, right?
Yeah.
And we were just talking about this too with Mike Guardia, our military history expert, and we were talking to him about what happens with a presidential change to the military. And he said it can be really interesting, like things change on procedures and it happens pretty fast overnight. And sometimes it's not a good thing, and sometimes it is. And I think he said he went through 3 presidents when he served, 2 or 3 presidents.
Wow.
And because in the Army, and then, as a veteran, he worked in the reserves. And so it's kind of a thing, because it's people's different takes on war. Look what's right. Who knows when this records on the 3rd Thursday of March, who knows where Ukraine and Russia and the rest of the world will be, and it's this delicate balance. And when you think of bridges, I think of bridging peace. A bridge is so symbolic in so many things. A bridge over troubled water. We should play that song,
That'd be good.
I know. It is about communication. I mean, the Bridges of Madison County, the movie and the story, that had nothing really to do with bridges, but it was about what was going on in the region, and it was about relationships, right? So I look at it that way too. And when you just decide to get rid of this relationship, then things, well, sometimes that's good.
I mean, when they build a bridge, don't they build from each side and then meet in the middle? They don't start at one end and go all the way across. Don't they start in opposite sides until they meet in the middle?
I don't know. I should have my husband up here. He's an engineer.
Oh, well, then he'll know.
He would know that, but I'm not inviting him up here. So
there it is. Yeah, we're not quite having the party yet, but but this is how they build it. It is interesting.
I think you're right, though, Nancy. And for anyone listening, write down and say, yes, Nancy's right.
Yeah. Yay.
Oh, great. Thank you. And then I'll hear it all day and all night. I'm always right. She always told me that growing up.
But we don't
I'll
know
say, but
yet.
why, Mom? Because I said so. I'm always right. No, she would always give explanations, but no matter what, she was always right. But going to the bridges, as they're building them, this thing happens. Obviously, change of workers. And that is something too, where when there's a big change in life, or a business or a project like that, that does stir mistrust, really, when you think about, maybe there was a few guys on there, or I don't know if women were allowed to do all that at that point in life. Oh, wait, you said women's right to vote, right? 1903 was a time of women's rights.
When I was writing this, I thought, okay, what was going on in 1903? Was there, there was no pandemic at that time. And I don't remember hearing about anything really horrible happening. So I kind of looked up, and 1903 was really a year of progressive ideas. So you have a time of women's rights with the suffragettes and marching for the vote. You have Orville and Wilbur Wright with Kitty Hawk, the whole thing on flight, the writing of Sherlock Holmes.
Cool.
And there was a drought that year, and Niagara Falls quit running because it ran out of water.
Wow.
I know, isn't that wild? So,
That's crazy.
I think at that time time, it really was, the world was this really full of wonder, and there was possibility, and there was all kinds of changes and achievements.
Well, and to tie it in too, Orville and Wilbur Wright probably saw what happened with the bridge and said, "Screw this, we're doing airplanes, man."
Yeah. Well, there's a trust factor.
Well, yeah, trust factor. I think we've talked about this. We have a friend who's a pilot, and he was on a show or something, and someone was like, "Oh, I just had a really bad day," and he goes, "Well, good for you, because us pilots are not allowed to have a bad day. We can't have a bad meal in the restaurant." I think that's what we were talking about. Is like a chef said,
wow,
I said every chef has a bad day once in a while. So, be lenient time, when you go to a restaurant and maybe the food sucked, maybe you just had a bad day. And he's like, but a pilot is not allowed to have that. And you kind of think about that. It kind of goes hand in hand with this, with trust over, the engineers and the people building it.
It's like surgeons. You can't have a bad day. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My
it's like
friend, when she was going through medical school, said she had to drop things from her vocabulary. And one of them was, oh.
Whoa.
Oh.
She said if there was someone, if there was someone who came into her, medical examination room, she was checking on something, she couldn't say, uh-oh.
You couldn't do oh dear. Look at it.
Ooh, what's that? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh my, you can't do that either. Oh my.
Whoa, that's ugly.
Yeah. Or you can't do you. Can you do you? No, that's the best one. If you go to a doctor's
you can't
office,
do you.
It's like here, all right. So, this whole part, I love this whole story about how it connects with trust, just that whole, the leadership part, when you have a leadership change, and we have it politically. And then the expectations get really high when someone takes over, right? Like, you need to have everything done immediately. Thank you very much. We voted for you, now do it. Or we didn't vote for you, now no matter what you do, you're going to suck, So that's an interesting thing. I wonder what happened when they were the communication. And so that's something that you work with people with, as being a workshop facilitator, is if there is shift change, how do you create trust in an organization?
Back then, like, I'm just surmising, and you would think that perhaps because there wasn't the same ability to communicate, there wasn't the text and the telephones and everything. So the communication might have been broken a little bit. But what we're looking at right now is, look at how broken communication is, because there's too many ways to communicate. So
that's true. So when it comes to a company and an organization with communication, isn't it almost like you have to set up a new language for everybody to focus? How are we going to communicate? If it's going to be, especially now with people in and out of offices, people are still like, I'm working half time at home, I'm partial at work, and people are going, wait, we do want people to go back to work. And younger generations, I was listening to a report on that, I think it was on NPR the other day, that the younger generation wants to go back to work because they feel like they're not learning anything new, because they're not in that space. And
that's frustrating.
Yeah, that they can't really make those relationships to get ahead in the company. So their communication, here they are the best at it, at TikTok, all of that. Yet they're the ones going, hello, now we want to go back to work. Thank you. And so that's kind of interesting.
I've interviewed a few leaders and talked to them about going back to work or working from home. And she said one of the challenges for younger people is so much of whether or not people are recognized and you see their abilities happens in the hallways, kind of the hallway talk.
Mhm.
So when you're working from home, you're not going to run into the president of the company who just happens to ask you a question that you can answer and you come to his attention.
Mhm.
So for the young people, yes, they might be able to work from home, but they're missing out on those opportunities to expand their skills and expand their base by having those unscripted conversations.
Mhm. Yeah.
What would
That's
you
true.
say for a company now, because so many organizations are going through change? They're having some depend. If you're in the tourism industry, you definitely start looking at raising the pay, the salaries and wages, and having better perks. They're looking at how they can attract workers back in, and so then you look at companies where you do have generational differences. You have, people that have been in the company for 30 years, and then you get your newbies in who have, oh, I got this idea. And the people who've been there, I've done that, been there, done that. So how do you bridge these gaps of change? Because the world is really changing fast, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's social media, the internet, the digital world has changed everything. So
Yep.
would
And
you
it's
say with a
not done
leader,
yet.
do you have some kind, do you train people to help bridge that gap? I'm using that word, bridge, so that they have communication, because if the guy just goes, oh, we've already been there, done that, that younger person coming in may not stick around with that kind of attitude.
And I think that virtually we're starting to get more of a handle on how we can use it effectively. So before it used to be, and I heard this from a number of people that we were zoomed out. And I think that in some regards, we were zoomed out in the way that we were using it. And what I'm discovering is that there are new ways of using a virtual rooms where you can get people communicating and talking and have breakout rooms and, trainers. And this is where it's really important to get somebody who's experienced in virtual training, getting people to have things like icebreakers and opportunities to have conversations that maybe normally wouldn't occur, but it means bringing everybody together and then mixing things up and separating them and getting people to talk who maybe normally wouldn't have the opportunity to talk. You have to have leaders and teach them that the last person who should be talking in a conversation, not the first, because if they're the first person to talk, everybody's going to fall into line and kind of, well, I can't say anything now because I disagreed with what the VP said. So if you want trust to grow in the company, you have to teach leaders not just how to communicate more, but how to communicate better and when to communicate. And that's going to help grow trust.
I like what you say about when, when to communicate. I mean, for me, I would have to go to that because it's when to shut up for me.
But things have changed. When I first started working, and this will really date me, bosses were really horrible. They really
still are in a lot of
of
cases, Nance.
Well, I mean, the big yelling, bombastic bully style.
Yeah, that's not allowed anymore.
No, it never really worked.
No,
it just got rid of your good people who were too smart to stick around. That's all it did. That's all it did.
Yeah.
No innovation left because those people who innovate don't put up with that. They find another job and they go and do something better. You're left with the people who feel they have no option.
Yeah, I worked for one of those bosses, and
me too.
Not a surprise to anybody. I didn't last. And he was a big guy too. So not only did he yell, but he was physically intimidating. And he was about 6'6" and well over 300 pounds. And he would stand up and get red in the face and yell.
Yes.
And people would, people like, I looked at him and said, I find you really intimidating. Can I get you to lower your voice and sit down?
You go, girl.
And I said it really politely.
Oh, wow.
And
You
everybody
asked for it.
kind of went,
Uh-oh.
Oh my gosh, stood up.
Yeah.
And so what did he do?
He said, I can't help my size. And I said, I see that, but are you aware that, this is very scary for someone when you start yelling, because it, physically this can be a lot. And I don't think, and looking back on it, I mean, I didn't stay with the company, but I don't think he realized, or maybe he did, but he was just this insecure guy, and it was the only thing he had going for him. That's kind of what I think.
Yeah, well, I know that when people yell, they're insecure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They feel they have to outdo by being louder, which really
Yeah.
doesn't work. Loud doesn't work.
It does.
Well,
It does sometimes for him. So that's, people do things. It worked for what he wanted to achieve, but only worked in the short term and didn't work in the long term.
Exactly.
His company went bankrupt, and that was not a surprise.
See? Yeah.
Well, that's not nice.
No. See?
No,
Yeah.
that's what happens. So this is the leadership is, this is the whole thing with bridges. You want good leadership. You want good, talented people on there. I want to talk about the ceremony, because I think that's what is really cool is this Order of the Iron Ring. And this is where it was in this bridge inspired the Order of the Iron Ring.
I like that.
So tell us about that, because I think this is when we first started talking about bridges. We were like, hey, as we go around the country, we should document bridges. And we've been through those little old ones, the little like covered bridges, and there's little stone bridges. And then what about people doing the tunnels? Like that's a whole other deal too.
Oh, that's cool too. Yeah.
The tunnels are freaky. I mean, all through the Blue Ridge Parkway, go through these tunnels. And basically on top, it's like a ridge. It is like a natural bridge. And I need to give a plug in for this. Is a lot of bridges now, they're doing all these wildlife corridor bridges for wildlife to cross over.
That. Yeah,
which I think is really, really, really cool. And it's good because these corridors. They are bridges, and they are keeping nature a little bit better. It helps nature and wildlife, and it helps drivers too. So people aren't hitting deer and moose if you're in Canada, and elk and, skunks. I mean, the other day, it's funny because we were driving through the redwoods, and there's just like so many dead skunks, because I'm like, what do we smell? And I'm like, I know we're in Humboldt area, Mendocino, and it's skunky, but it was actual skunk. Like everybody's happy here. But anyway,
except for the skunk.
So I think these kind of corridors, and then the animals have to learn to go in the corridors and trust that they're okay, so that's a whole other thing. But this whole order of the ring of the Iron Ring. Tell us about that.
Okay, so if I don't think it's too long. It's not in the article, but this is what Rudyard-Kipling wrote, and it was part of the ceremony. And so it was and so whoever's name it was, in the presence of these my betters and my equals in my calling, bind myself upon my honor and cold iron, that of the best of my knowledge and power, I will not henceforward suffer or pass or be privy to the passing of bad workmanship or faulty material in aught that concerns my works before mankind as an engineer, or in my dealings with my own soul before my maker. My time I will not refuse, my thought I will not grudge, my care I will not deny towards the honor, use, stability, and perfection of any works to which I may be called to set my hand. My fair wages for that work I will openly take, My reputation and my calling I will honorably guard, but I will in no way go about to compass or wrest judgment or gratification from anyone with whom I may deal. And further, I will early and warily strive my uttermost against professional jealousy and the belittling of my working colleagues in any field of their labor. For my assured failures and derelictions, I ask pardon beforehand of my betters and my equals in my calling here assembled, praying that in the hour of my temptations, weakness and weariness, the memory of this my obligation and of the company before whom it was entered into may return to me to aid, comfort, and restrain. So those are the words that Rudyard-Kipling wrote for the ritual of the calling of the engineer.
Awesome.
Wow.
That's pretty cool.
And this is something
that.
you said that was really started in Canada.
Yes.
And they held, the engineers hold this to be more important. This whole order, and it's like taking an oath.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's
It
like
is.
the Hippocratic Oath,
Right.
really.
Yeah.
This is the equivalent of the Hippocratic Oath for
Exactly.
doctors. But the difference is that in Canada, it is part of the graduation ceremony for the engineers. And what I was told, and it might not be true of everybody, that getting your iron ring is more coveted than getting your diploma.
Wow, I didn't know that. See, that's amazing.
That's
So
cool.
this is like a real, hey, this is what we're doing, and I stand by this. Yeah.
It's a promise to do your best.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So no one get hurt. That's awesome.
And you're not going to covet, you're not going to mess up someone else just because you're jealous of them.
Mm-hmm.
Rudyard said it a little bit more eloquently, mind you.
But it's true. It's like the end result is what counts. It's just as much as how you got there.
Yeah.
It's got your trust, your pillars of trust here.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned them in the article. That trust is built from a combination of caring, commitment, competence, consistency, and communication.
Yeah.
So this really does it all,
Yeah. And really it's around the ethics and everything. So and then at what point do we say, okay, the bridge is built and now we can just allow that to go by the wayside? Like you were talking about the bridge collapsing in Pittsburgh when the president was going there to talk about how important it was for the infrastructure to be protected. So there needs to be, I think the next iteration, we need to say, and for all of those guardians of the bridges, we promise to uphold the safety standards, the ethics and safety standards of the original builders.
There is a lot of maintenance needed in this country. As we cross the country, some of the roads we've been on were absolutely, they should have been closed. I mean, some of the roads are in such disrepair.
Poor car.
There's a lot of roads being repaired. We ran into road construction everywhere, but it's been left.
Wow.
And also the road construction, sometimes it's not labeled, or there's the signage and all of that isn't that great. Yeah. And they put you in hazardous positions. Yeah. We were actually in Pennsylvania driving at night, and I ended up in a road that they were working on where you shouldn't be, except for those big pieces, those big bulldozery things. Oh, and with all the asphalt. So all the asphalt was up, and I ended up driving down this and got stuck in there, had to reverse out, almost got into a car wreck because of this, because there was no signs. Yeah. And there was no lights, and you couldn't see what was going on, and there was no signs telling me.
That would have been scary. I mean, how do you know there's not this big, huge drop-off hole in front of you?
You don't.
Because I hit an embankment. There was an embankment asphalt right in front of us, you know. And so I managed to not hit it 100%, you know, just kind of like, oh, well, here we are. And now you're going to reverse, and people are honking at me because it was rush hour. It was like 5 a.m. It wasn't at night. It was at 5 a.m. So
It was
people were
still
on their
dark.
way, and it was dark, winter. And and then I went to take a right, and you know, because I obviously took a right into what was the road, but it was closed, and there was no sign. There was zero signs
Wow.
telling me not to do that. And so I didn't know it was construction. And the crew was starting to work, you know, put things and do things. But I'm like, you should have cones there and do multiple ones. Because yeah, some people take them. And that is the truth is, you know, the general public will move signs and do things at night. You
Yeah,
know,
they do.
kids will do things.
Yeah, they
I'm
do.
not blaming kids, but I'm just saying, I know what happens out there. And so that could have happened, but they should really look at that because it's people's lives, you know, with how they're
Yeah.
doing things. And cars, the amount, it's not, you know, the cars wear and tear nowadays, it's not funny because it's really hard to even buy a car because you can't find one with a chip in it. You know what I mean? It's like the productions of cars is, you know, we're slow to get new cars. And yeah, so it's kind of this whole weird thing. And so it really is that should be in there when you build a bridge. There should be if you have funding to build it, you need to have funding to maintain it.
Exactly.
Yeah. But how many bridges are like well over 100 years old? And when they build them, are they thinking of who's going to maintain this 100 years from now? I mean,
yeah,
Well, I think that's what taxes are.
Yeah.
You know, but it'd be interesting to figure out when out of the taxes we pay, how much really goes where and to whom. Just saying, how much goes to salaries? Just wondering. How much, you know, how much really goes into actual repairs, or do we wait till it can't get any worse and then we
That's
repair?
it, man. I'm going to get highway people on the show now. We're going to have to do a follow-up on this. We've got too many questions.
Well, we don't really know, you know, we don't really know. So it'd be fun to find out how it all works. So we actually are educated and we can talk sensibly about it.
Yeah.
I mean, if we could just, of course, like I think between the three of us, we should be able to solve all of the world's problems in an hour. So, I mean,
well, I have a solution for some things that are real fast.
So here's mine, because everybody's, I know, just listening to this with bated breath. So we just scrap everything that is right now and we divide it into different pies. So we figure out exactly, you've got this big pot of money. And then we can say, okay, so now we're going to take this much of the pie and it's going to go towards repair and maintenance. And you scrap everything that's now existing and get rid of all the superfluous stuff and decide what is necessary. Maybe a bit bigger job than how I'm describing it. But, you know, I just wonder how much of it is just wasted.
Well, the problem with scrapping everything that we have is it takes too darn long to rebuild.
Yeah, I know. It's not a perfect system, Nancy. It was what I could come up with in 2 minutes.
I know, you know, and I was just thinking about, you know, scrapping this, scrap that. And then I'm looking and thinking, yeah, well, I don't know. But it does seem to me that we're not that organized. Like the right hand never knows what the left hand's doing.
Yeah.
And that's where I would probably start with better communication between organizations so that they know, you know, well, I'm out here to build this bridge. Sorry, I'm digging a ditch under your bridge.
Yeah.
When we went to the Redwoods, we went to do the Avenue of Giants. That's it's a state park in Humboldt County. And you start at the beginning and you get a little brochure and you can see, it tells you this is the biomass place. This is the oldest biomass, wasn't it? The oldest biomass field in the world. And this tree did this. These ones are gnarly and burly, you know. But anyway, they were fixing a bridge right at the entrance of it. And we were watching these bridge workers go on the side, like they had a side bridge that they were walking on along the bridge. Like, but it looked like there's no way in hell you would ever get me doing that. You
No.
know what I mean?
Wow.
And Nancy and I were, because we knew we were going to do this recording with you, and we're looking at this going, dude, that takes some guts. And I know it becomes easy. Like when you look at people doing work on rooftops, I still I bow down to them because I'm scared of heights and I'm not good at bridges, driving over them, but I still do it. But you've got to have respect for these people because every day they're out there, they are putting themselves into danger,
And they were walking on something that was swinging that looked like cloth or canvas.
like a suspension kind of cloth bridge.
And I'm like,
Oh, wow.
oh, I hope
Dude.
you had a good seamstress, whoever sewed that together.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So you really do need to trust who you're working for when you do things like that.
Yeah. And then, just finding people who are willing to step up into those leadership positions, because so many times you've got people that are brilliant and they're good leaders, and the grief that they have to go through, I'm sure that some of them think, this isn't worth it. I'm going to take a position where I don't have to take all this abuse. So finding people who are actually willing to be leaders, I think, is sometimes difficult. And that's what I'm hearing with some companies, is just getting the qualified staff who are willing to take those positions.
Well, it's kind of like politics. I mean, how can the commander-in-chief command all our armed forces if they've never served in any armed force? I don't see how that's possible.
Yeah.
It's like I'm going to win a baking competition, but I've never set foot in the kitchen. So it's kind of like, I don't know.
Well, I think it is, but the leaders, do need to have compensation for going through what they're doing. And it's not always the money, because people aren't, money's a motivation, right? But
yeah,
they have leaders above the leaders, right? And so the company, the organization, and if the leader is really good, then you're going to have the people working with the leader being, a nice workforce. So everyone's nice and supportive of each other. But the person above the leader needs to take care of the leader. The big, you see what I mean? It's like, even if you're at the very top, you've got to create that culture of happiness and excitement to do your job. It should be exciting.
And bringing it back to the Order of the Ring, one of the things that I loved was it gave a structure and it gave a container for what was expected of everybody who graduates. So with these young engineers who are graduating, they're given this, and that is kind of what the container of what is expected of them going forward. They know what they're supposed to achieve. And it's the same, I think, if companies create the same kind of container where they actually, we talk about trust being caring, commitment, consistency, competence, and communication. So if you put what is expected of people and what is not allowed, so almost like the Order of the Rings, if people had this container of what is acceptable behavior, what does trust look like within an organization? I mean, we talk a little bit about what I do within companies, but part of it is getting some of the leadership team together and asking questions that they think they know the answer to. And then when you get them together, they realize that each of them has their own idea. And when they get together in a room, it becomes something unique and different, and sometimes quite beautiful.
There's a dedication to putting out the best, whatever the product or service is. There's a dedication that has to be there in order for the consumer clientele of the product or whatever service is happy. And that's why you get paid. If you don't have that, bridges fall down.
Yeah.
And it is a daily thing. The bridges do have to be maintained. You can't just go, it's been there 100 years, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Not anymore, because the weight that those bridges were meant to take, pretty sure we're probably putting way more weight on the bridges of today. We got way more cars. These aren't Model T Fords going over there with little wooden wheels,
Yeah, they didn't have the things like the huge trucks and with
Right.
all of the weight.
The
Yeah.
18-wheelers and all that.
Well, you should see the bridge that I was supposed to go over in a wildlife refuge the other day. GPS got us all lost. There's swamps on either side of the dirt road.
We're like,
And I had to reverse out. I've done a lot of reversing lately. I'm very good at reversing now. I can parallel park now too because of it. But you're going down this dirt road, dee, 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 and you could actually hear frogs. This was crazy.
It was
it's
cool.
winter. And all of a sudden it gets to this bridge, and I stopped the car and like, how do you turn around when you literally do have a swamp on either side? And I get out and I go look, and no.
We're going, I don't think so.
No, we don't trust the bridge.
Don't trust the
Wow.
bridge.
We're looking
Yeah,
at this. We do not
don't
trust it.
trust.
And I don't think the car would even fit. And do you take that chance? There's that side of me that goes, oh, come on, let's go for it and see what happens. But like, no. Again, we have a car shortage. I'm not playing that game.
Yeah.
But it really, if you didn't, you wrote a blog post about Ted Lasso, and the guy
I
playing
love Ted
darts.
Lasso. Yeah.
And you were talking about assumptions and curiosity. And, if I just assumed, oh, it'll be fine, and didn't get out and have that curiosity, we probably would be in with the Gators. And I wasn't in the mood to go through that and lose the car, because it really would have happened. I think it was more for ATVs, but there's no sign, hey, this is not for cars. So you really, you had to be, well, I don't think everything should be labeled for everybody and perfectly pretty, but
common sense is a good thing to have.
there was common sense to have, and assumptions. You don't just assume because it's there you can do it. And you had to get out and really look at it. And the more I looked at it, I'm like, dude, and even if
Not
we
worth
did
it.
fit, I mean, if I coughed, we're going down,
Wow.
So,
And, it's the other thing, how much we depend on technology now. I've heard of people, instead of using their common sense and being curious and asking questions, they've followed GPS into rivers and off cliffs. I mean, some of the stories that, if they are true, you kind of go, where was the common sense? Like, the person is looking at the GPS instead of what is in front of them.
oh, yes.
Oh boy.
Oh, no, it's really true.
Oh boy.
And I just listened to her and I'll glance at it, but we call her Jane because it's Jane Says. But anyway, I find that because we all listen to GPS, you start blindly following. And trusting. There is such a thing as blind trust, and we as we're like sheep, or we're that kind of animal. Human beings are like that. Let's
We're
gather.
herd animals.
We are. Let's go here.
Animals.
Everybody's doing it. Well, that doesn't make it right, and that doesn't make a good leader either. That means you're a follower instead of a leader, and I think that's something too. As human beings. Oh, just because the bridge is there doesn't mean you just cross it. You should look at it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because it could be crumbling.
We absolutely need followers. Not everyone. I hear that everyone's a leader. Well, actually, I see it differently. I think that there are some people who are great leaders, and there are some people who are brilliant followers.
Yeah. And you can't all have leaders. That's called chaos.
Yeah.
Chaos in the kitchen. Too many cooks.
As a follower, it's okay to question leaders, though. And a good leader should actually encourage that.
Yeah. Makes a better leader.
Yeah.
The questions and curiosity. I love that about curiosity, because curiosity kills the cat, but it really didn't get killed because I have 9 lives. So we too can be kittens.
Second part of that is satisfaction brought it back.
Yeah. See,
found out what it needed to know.
Exactly.
See, I like this. And Rudyard-Kipling would agree because he wrote about tigers in Jungle Book.
Yeah.
So I had no idea it had anything to do with bridges. I was like, what? And I got all stuck on his Wikipedia page, and I'm looking at all these houses. They have all these maps of where he's lived and been around the world, England, America, Canada, India,
He's a
you just,
fascinating character.
Yeah.
dude,
If I could have, I would have read his whole Order of the Engineer with an accent, but it would have just been really, really awful. So I made that executive decision not to hurt everybody's ears and just read it.
she assumed we'd start laughing. Right? She would assume
Pretty
correctly.
I know you two. You would have
Pretty
started
good assumption.
laughing.
We would have, it was like pitter patter.
Let's get at her.
I love it. I love it, Lee. What a great conversation. And everyone, follow us. We're going to have a map going of all these bridges. We've done tons of bridges, but the reality is half of the time we don't get to photograph them because you're on the bridge and you've got and then like once you get over the bridge, literally, we're lucky that we got over the bridge because I'm driving and it's not a fun thing to be in the car with me while I go over a bridge. It's just not fun. And then, to get out of the car,
It's
like to look at
interesting.
the bridge, I may fall down, but we've done a lot of bridges. Like really, I think we've done some of the highest bridges in the
Oh,
country
yeah.
and
Wow.
longest ones. And like the
Mhm.
Chesapeake Bay Bridge. No. Like, how did they do that? No, just no.
It's
But we need 'em.
interesting. It's amazing, some of these bridges. I can't figure out how they're built. Like, I mean, I suppose they have to go put supports all along the way, then come back and put the flooring and my own
Mhm.
words for, what you're going to walk on or drive on, and then put the sides on. I don't,
Mm.
It's a big deal.
All
It's a
the
big
bayou
deal.
bridges, the bridges
That's
over
why
the
they go to
bayous.
school.
Yeah. Well, a lot of school.
And
Yeah.
all the bridges for trains, that's a whole other thing too. All the bridges for trains.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a huge, and I think that is part of the railroad helped bridges. I think, that those two industries went together. Just we need a bridge so that the railroad can go over more than humans and cars. The rail, it was about rail at that time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. There's
everybody
so
wanted the
much
train.
that's interesting as far as the bridges, because I think historians and some of the best politicians decided that they would unite the country from coast to coast. And that includes
Mhm.
Canada and the United States. And the wonder of having all of these bridges built was also part of the vision of some of the people who wanted to make sure that we were united. Wouldn't that be nice if we
Sea
were
to
united
shining
now?
sea.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
from sea to shining sea.
and state border lines are on a lot of the bridges. When we go back and forth through over Memphis, they're like, "Welcome to Tennessee." It's like all of a sudden halfway through. And I mean, who put the marker of the state line over the water? Like
Exactly.
this, welcome to Arkansas. And that bridge got fixed. By the way,
It makes sense to have
there
the
was
border
drama
in
with
the
that
middle.
bridge.
It makes sense because if you said one side owns the river, the other side's going to be majorly bad.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you put it in the middle.
Yeah, because now what if if you go to war, like remember North and South, like, okay, so what would
Yeah.
happen? All right, so we're going to have a war and the bridge. I mean, are you going to get up on the bridge and fight each other on a bridge? Like historically speaking, would that happen? Probably, but that would scare the crap out of me because I don't want to be on the bridge and I'd already be like shaking in my boots because I'd be on the bridge. And then someone's going to come after you with, a sword or something.
Oh, gosh.
Dude,
You're
So I've
watching
got
too
this
many
visual,
movies.
Lisa, of you like standing on the bridge,
the duel.
and all of a sudden someone runs towards you, and the bridge moves a little bit, and you
Dude,
screaming
no.
and throwing your arms up and running to the side.
No, I've told you that I was on a suspension bridge and the planks were falling in the water, right? In South Africa.
That's true.
Dude,
That is
seriously,
true.
we've done
South
bridges.
Africa, that was scary.
That would be pretty
That
freaky.
was
Then-
scary.
There was in Okrabi Falls, which is up in the Kalahari Desert. And Nancy and I got to the campground and parked the car, and there was like sunset. It wasn't quite, it was the end of the day, but
Mhm.
there was this little nature trail. Let me tell you, little nature trails sometimes do not mean little nature trails. And
No,
it was the Klipspringer Trail, remember? And you
that's
followed
right.
the
Yeah.
Klipspringer is this tiny little buck. And I just watched a video of Cape mountain dog, hunting dogs, Cape dogs,
Mm.
going after the Klipspringer. And the
Aw.
Klipspringers are hugging the rock, and the dogs are going all around them and can't get them because of the way they're like mountain goats, the way they can
But they're tiny.
climb
Their
rocks.
four hooves fit on a dime.
It's
That's how
amazing.
small these little tiny legs and hoofs are.
It's crazy. So we're following the little signs of the Klipspringer Trail, and we get to Okrabi Falls, which is this huge waterfall in the middle of the desert, right? It's crazy. And then to get back, the part of the bridge is rocks going over a gorge that you're supposed to just walk or crawl across. And
Yeah.
we did it.
Hands and knees.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude,
When in doubt,
seriously.
hands and
Sorry for
knees.
saying dude, but that was a dude. Like, what the heck? You know, I'll never forget that. It was hell no.
And they had
No.
little white paintings of footsteps where you're supposed to go to help you get over the rocks. It
Just,
was
you know, go over the gorge.
just do
No,
it. Yeah.
no.
Hands and
Mm-mm.
knees. I'm telling you, works.
Yeah. Mhm. So
Wow.
the bridges are cool because they have like the bridges, you know, in parks are interesting. There's the one in Zalud, the Zalud Meadow Trail in Kings Canyon National Park, and it's beautiful. You go over this water and it changes colors with the light to this beautiful turquoisey green. Just all depends, you know, but that I trust that bridge. You know, they have to check it because that part of the park is closed during the winter because of the snowpack. And then they
Mhm.
open in the spring, so everything gets checked. You know what I mean? So it's close enough to the roadway and stuff that it's they have to look at it. It's not off in the wilderness boonies, you know. So you feel safer there versus the Okrabi Falls gorge
Wow.
thing. Mm-mm.
I hiked the Torres del Paine in Chile with my daughter. What was it, 5 years ago? And over a lot of these streams, people who hiked had built some of the bridges. So some of them were planks put together with bungee cords. you were kind of walking across.
Whee!
And there were bridges that I don't know who built them. No one who had taken a course, but it would be like one piece of wood that you had to walk across, like you were walking a tightrope. And going in areas that you think, okay, this can't be safe, but then you'd see someone scamper across it who was bigger than you, and you'd think, oh, okay.
Well, Nancy, you did the one in Mount Rainier. It's out by Longview entrance, and it's a huge log that you walk across the river on.
Yeah, that was
And
cool.
I'm like, I'm not doing it. No way. She did it.
Yeah.
And I was like, look at Nancy. Go, Nancy. Nancy gets 5 points. And by the time she comes back, she got 10.
Yeah.
So,
what are points worth now, Lisa?
Points are glasses of wine now.
Yes.
Oh,
of course, you know. So
there
if she
you
did
go.
that, I get when
And
you get
just to
10
be-
points, you get a glass.
Just be honest with you, I needed it at the end.
And no, because she did it and she's all like bragging, you know. And
That
then
was
by the
cool.
time she turned around, her face was very studious. And then I'm like, all right, 10 points, glass of wine. So
Okay.
you have to get 10 points. You have to, you know, and you get it when it gets to 10, you really do get the glass of wine because not only did you do it one way, you did it back and you already know what hell you put yourself through.
Yep.
And we got wine at that the Rio Gorge in Taos, New Mexico. There's this massive bridge and Rio Gorge. And we went for sunset and it's actually connected to a rest area, which Nancy and I are familiar with across the country. It's Nancy's favorite things are rest areas and in New Mexico. But anyway, this was this massive, massive bridge. And I photographed it at sunset just for this story, actually. And
so what are your favorite bridges, both of you? What would your favorite bridge be?
Oh gosh.
One that is over water that's only 5 feet wide.
And short, very short.
A bridge for you know that one, Nancy, the covered bridge in the Champagne Forest in
so the covered bridges are
Illinois.
Really
Illinois.
Yeah,
We
they're
went
really
there.
unique.
There were 2 bridges. So one, well, this is when we were driving from Wisconsin to Florida in snow in January and ice. And we'd gone through a snowstorm driving and all of a sudden, like you could see all the ice just crystallized on trees. It was magical. And there was this little forest. And of course, pull over for brown signs and off we go. And I went to, they have a botanical garden part of this forest preserve. And the botanical garden had a Christmas theme going and they had a red bridge going over with a little waterfall bright red, and they had like gift boxes for the Christmas, Christmas gifts, all by the bridge, and just this magical little botanical garden area.
Sounds beautiful.
And then we went around the corner, and they had this beautiful red covered bridge, historic covered bridge. And when people drive over it, you could hear the tires on slatted wood, So it was really, and just this beautiful river with trees. It just like the epitome of winter magic. I vote for that one. What about you, Nancy?
I like the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge a lot. I like it. I know people don't, but I don't know.
You can drive it next time.
Yeah, I know, because as you're driving, it looks like you, got on a different bridge somehow, but you really didn't. And so it's kind of confusing. So I know it scares people, but I think it's such a feat to actually be able to build a bridge like that. Hands off to that. I hats off to that, because I can't imagine how it's done. And we just travel every day expecting it to work.
Well, if you get up to Vancouver, there is the Capilano Suspension Bridge. And Lisa, you probably will never want to do it, but it is.
I have blind trust, Lee. I'll do it.
It is one of the most beautiful views you'll see. And it is, it's really well maintained, but it's gorgeous. It's a little scary, and you're suspended, and it swings a little, and goes through the forest. Swings. Yeah, it swings. It's a swinging bridge.
So you can walk it.
You can walk it. It is let's see, what does it say about it? It was built 130 years ago.
Whoa.
And Capilano is an indigenous name belonging to the Squamish Nation.
Yeah.
But it's gorgeous. It's the views that you see, and just part of the amazing set of trails in British Columbia, which I think is one of the prettiest areas in Canada.
We are right there. We're right there. We're right across. We're 20 minutes from the border.
We're 20 minutes from that. Yeah.
I think.
I think you can go up and see it.
There was one bridge that during a really, really huge rainstorm, I crossed in South Africa. And as I crossed over it, it was tumbling, crashing in. There's a waterfall on one side, the ocean on the other, and the bridge was collapsing as I drove over it. That could be a favorite. So I got to the other side, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm on ground, real earth. Yeah. So I was like, oh boy, I got to find a new way home. Can't go back that way.
There is one I want to go on in Pennsylvania, and it's up in the northwest part of Pennsylvania. In fact, it's where the brewery is.
So we could all meet there.
Yeah, and it's Schwab Beer Brewery. Yeah, it is Schwab Brewery. It's the oldest brewery, I think, in Pennsylvania. No, It's not Schwab. It's not. Schlim Brewery. I got to look it up. I'm trying. Because I should know this off the top of my head here.
The brewery on the bridge.
John Schlim. Yeah, because it is the straw. It is Straub. Okay, Straub Brewery in Pennsylvania. Okay. And Straub. That's not Schwab. It's Straub. AUB. So John Schlim has been on our show a couple times. He wrote the book Moonshine, and it's a history of moonshine across the country. And he's also done these vegetarian and vegan recipe books and things, and he's really cool. So Straub beer has been going since 1872, and it's in St. Mary's, Pennsylvania. And so there is an elk preserve near the brewery. And of course we want to go to the brewery, right? That we could meet there.
And the elk preserve.
Sounds like good. Yeah, and they have, they're out in the elk country, and out in that region, and I'm trying to look, there is a huge, it's like a huge, they took what was a bridge for the railroad, right? And so now you can hike, it's the rail trail. It's a rail trail, but it goes over a bridge. So you are on top of the trees. where
cool.
yeah, it's called it's a railroad bridge has converted to pedestrian traffic on the Pine Creek Rail Trail. And so they put wood,
Interesting.
and you are on top of the trees, literally. And so
Wow.
I want to do that, but
That's
maybe I'll have the
interesting.
beer first and then the beer after.
Yes, that sounds good.
I know you're not supposed to drink and walk, but I think to help my energy, my fears, that would be a good idea. But
Okay.
this is where all the elk are in Pennsylvania. So,
Cool.
and
I'm
see,
down.
you're in Elkins Park, so I'm just saying we should meet up this summer. We'll be out
Yeah,
there.
well,
We'll be
you'll
there in
have to
July.
be quick because, as you know, I'm going to be moving back to Canada. So,
Oh,
Now, I
well.
just heard a Joni Mitchell song in my head as soon as you said, I'm going back to Canada. I can't sing like her, but, but yeah, so yeah, well, hopefully we'll be able to meet you, or we'll just come over and see you across the border. So
yeah, well, I'll be here for a while. And I think
Cool.
the next time that we're talking, I'll be up there. And so I'll be calling in
Yes.
from Nova Scotia.
That's awesome. And actually, that's going to happen before this airs. So aren't we good people?
Yeah.
We're getting it done. We're getting it done. But it'll definitely, we will see you this year. This is the year, Lee. It's happening.
That would be great. I'd love
it's-
that. I'd love
it's
that. And there might be
happening.
a few glasses of wine and a few laughs that will
Oh,
share.
yes. Of course, there's going to be wine involved. And,
Yeah.
and listen, I trust it will happen. See?
Mhm.
I love that. That's
Yes.
a great segue to
So everyone, keep up with Lee. It's thetrustarchitect.biz, or you can go to leabrovedani.com as well. And of course, every third Thursday, we air our conversations with Lee, focusing on trust. And who knew we'd be talking about bridges and falling down, London bridges falling down. Uh-oh.
yeah.
Real nice, real nice. Again, everyone, Lee's books are Trust Me, Restore Belief and Confidence in an Uncertain World, and Trusted, Secret Lessons from an Inspired Leader. You can also keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. So thank you so much, Lee. You take care.
Thank you. It's always fun with you too.
Well, thank you.